Greetings, everyone. Welcome to my sketchbook. As I was walking towards my desk here, I started thinking about something that I haven't seen in a while, and this might be an interesting thing to try to draw. So I have this ink here. It's a pretty neat bottle. I can't really get this sediment to move around too much here because it sits for a little while, and then that glittery fun stuff just kind of, there we go. Now it's kind of breaking up a little bit. Yeah, anyway, it just kind of sits at the bottom, and then you can move it around. So what I'm going to do, that's the glorious thing about doing things in real time if you don't have stuff sort of set already. Yeah, so I was thinking about something, and there are things that I kind of take for granted and things that kind of annoy me, and I don't really think about it until, another time. How often do you think about, well, it depends on where you live. So do you think about how water gets to you? And I think for a lot of people, if you live in a city or a town, your water is brought to you by the municipality itself. So it's a system that relies on a reservoir of some kind. So it could be above ground, or it could be kind of like a lake of sorts. It's interesting because I remember when I was a kid going to, let's zoom in on this just a little bit. If it will, come on now. Well, maybe not that much. Let's go to there. To an old farmhouse, and they had a hand pump, which I think is one of the neatest kind of things. Now what I'm doing here is I'm creating the water first, and I'll draw the pump around it after. So some pumps work by like a siphoning technique of sorts, and others are drawn by, I would say it's more like a piston kind of action. And that's the one that I'm going to draw. Another way, and draw, that's, how many times can I say that as it relates to water? The other way, I guess, would be that old wishing well sort of way of drawing water, which would be to lower a bucket down on a rope, get the bucket to dip below the water line itself, fill it up, and then pull it back up to the top, either by crank winding or just simply hand over hand pulling it up. And again, that's not the type that I'm going to be drawing here, I don't think. Well, obviously, I'm the person with the pen, so I know what's going on, kind of, with this. But I'm letting the water do the thing first. Some of it will disappear after, as I draw the rest of it around it. But I kind of take this for granted, is kind of what I'm getting at. Now, depending on what you have in your home, there's a good chance that the faucet you have might resemble some part of this shape, the thing that once was so important to many of us. I think that's all I'm going to do with that. I'm going to set that pen aside, put the cover back on this cool bottle. What a neat thing that is. Oh yeah, that material settles quick. I have the other ink beside me and my trusty sketchbook pen. Now, I think a lot of those were made out of cast iron. At least I feel like that's the case. It's been a while since I've seen one. I'm sure they exist in other ways in other places, and if you are outside of a municipality that has the water taken care of, then it's possible you've seen these many a time. Now let's give that a base here. I understand the principle of it. So it seems like an interesting thing that somebody would have figured out certain parts of this kind of thing to make sure that, well, the spigot part probably would be a lot longer than this, but I didn't create enough of an arc for that to happen. And I don't know the technical names for these things. By the way, I know that there would require a pivot up here for the handle. And you would have to have a place for this plunger to go through. The actual piston that would be used to draw the water, depending on, actually, let's see if I can finish a bit more of that. As I said, I think a lot of these were like cast iron. Let's give that kind of a slight curve. And then back curve it here. And we'll kind of square out part of that a little bit. Not a perfect gooseneck. You could add whatever kind of filigree or cool ornamentation to this as you might for something of importance to you and your household. I don't know if there is a pivoting type point here. I'm going to say probably, because some parts of this would need to be replaceable for this to drop down in through here. And then here you would need almost like, well, that piston would be more of a kind of like a valve of sorts. So it would easily be able to drop down, and maybe the shape would be more like this. And that you could have a series of those, I would think, that could lead in steps in order to do the drawing. So almost like one-way valves. And let's say you have a few of these that lead down, and that way it can be brought up in stages. So yeah, easily going this way. Maybe there could be like a rubber stopper here that would fold when it's going down that way, and then would be rigid. So when you're pulling it back up, it would fill out the outsides of the inside of that pipe. Now these are still kind of in use today, especially when you have the power go out. You would be thankful to have such a device if you have your own well. So now in a lot of towns, I think a lot of us have, I know I do, municipal water supply. You have to rely on your city or the municipality to supply you your water. And often the water is treated for your health concerns. Even then, you kind of have to be careful with that supply. If you don't really, if you don't know where certain things come from, somewhere along the way it could become contaminated. And if you're not linked up with your city's heads up emailing system, then you are drinking water that could be, in some ways, messed up. Sometimes sediment can make its way through. So often you can get your water to be fluorinated, which is a very specific poison which is meant to get rid of terrible things, I suppose. By the time it gets to you, it should be reasonably diluted. You know, like parts per million, parts per billion, that kind of a thing. What else can we add to this? Well, I made a container here. We're going to pretend that this container is kind of glass. And we're going to have it slightly more funneled in its shape. So not just a bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. And this bucket is kind of full. Well, I think that's going to be basically it. I can add some other fun details to this, I suppose. But I'm going to complete some part of this stand here. And give a spot for that bucket to sit. So yeah, let me know in the comments when the last time you got to use one of these things. If you use one all the time, do you have one in your garden space? Do you have one in your home? Does it exist at your, a relative's place or something like that? I haven't used one in quite a while. And as far as like, the other types of wells, I haven't seen a wishing well in a while. A place where you would possibly throw money. I know that's a popular thing to do, to throw money in water. Um, I believe that it has a different sort of origin to it. People do it in different ways. Sometimes it's for making a wish. It's not like it's Poseidon. I'm not sure who exactly you give that to. Some places that money is meant to go towards, oh, let's say, community help. I think that's going to be it. I'm going to move this over just a little bit, as I normally do. You can make your way up here, of course. This is where well, you can see a picture of me in my glorious childhood. So yeah, that's a picture of me that shows up here. And then, of course, previous videos show up here. The way I do it anyway. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out for a minute or so. Feel free to check out some of my other zany, strange, long-form videos, which you can just fast forward through if you wish, or draw along. I think that'd be fun too. So again, let me know if you've used one of these, if you continue to use one of these, because it's been a little while for me since I've seen one, and I think they're pretty neat. Human beings come up with some of the weirdest, awesomest things, and this might be one of the few kind of like modern-ish like things that if I were to go back in time and tell someone, hey, let's see if we could build this, I might be able to come up with one of these to build, because it's simple enough. Now, as far as like making iron goes, I might be able to, like, get hold of sand and heat it up and transfer, like, the carbonated iron that's in soil. Anyway, I'd probably suffer with some of that. So making one of these, if I had bamboo, I don't know, maybe I could come up with something, but a hollow tube plant, that's more rambling on than I think is necessary. Wow, I already said see you later, but here I am still doing something. I'm going to finish this off. All right, there you go. Yeah, so check out my profile up there. Check out the previous video, and thanks for hanging out. Ciao for now.